You feel it the moment you walk into the room, that tightening in your chest, that low electric hum of anxiety, because they are there. The one who twists every word you say, the one who turns your kindness into ammunition. You rehearse your sentences before you speak them. You audit your tone. You walk on eggshells so thin they crack just by being looked at. And the worst part, you are intelligent. You see the manipulation in real time. You can name every tactic, and yet somehow every single confrontation ends with you exhausted, defending yourself against a charge that was never real, and then walking away looking like the calm one. You have been outmaneuvered by someone you intellectually outclass, and that is the wound that will not close. Because the moment you fight back, the moment you explain, the moment you defend your character, you have already lost. You stepped into their arena. You picked up the weapon they handed you. And Machiavelli understood 500 years ago that the most efficient way to neutralize a psychological predator is not to fight them. It is to step out of the way and let their own momentum collapse them. Today, you learn the art of psychological Aikido. Today, you learn how to outsmart any manipulator using their own trap. And here is the uncomfortable truth nobody taught you. The manipulator does not need to be smarter than you to control you. They only need one thing: your predictable emotional resistance. Your defensiveness is the fuel in their engine. Your need to be understood is the leash they hold. Every time you explain yourself, every time you correct the record, every time you raise your voice to be heard, you are paying them a tax. You are funding their dominance with your own emotional currency. The system you were raised in trained you to believe that truth wins, that good people prevail, that if you just communicate clearly enough, the manipulator will see reason and stop. This is the most expensive lie you have ever been sold. A manipulator does not misunderstand you. They understand you precisely. That is the entire problem. They understand exactly which buttons trigger you, exactly which insecurities make you over-explain, exactly which accusations make you scramble to prove your innocence. And as long as you keep responding, you keep confirming that the buttons still work. You keep proving they own you. You did not find this video by accident. You found it because something in you has finally cracked. Some quiet ancient part of you has decided that you will not spend another year being psychologically managed by someone with a fraction of your depth. And in the next 20 minutes, you are going to learn the framework that grandmasters, strategists, and the most composed power players in history have always known. You are going to learn strategic yielding. You are going to learn the vacuum strategy. You are going to learn how to make a manipulator collapse under the weight of their own performance, without you ever raising your voice, without you ever sacrificing your integrity, and without you ever sinking to their level. You will leave this video different, calmer, colder where it counts, and dangerous in the way only a quiet mind can be. If these ideas resonate with you, hit that subscribe button for more top-tier content. Also, drop a checkmate in the comments so I know you're ready. Let's dive in. Here is what nobody explains about manipulation, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The manipulator is not actually attacking you. They are casting a net. The accusation, the guilt trip, the cold shoulder, the dramatic sigh, the carefully placed insult disguised as a joke, none of these are the real attack. They are bait. They are designed to provoke a reaction, because the reaction is what they actually need. The reaction is what gives them leverage. The reaction is what lets them say, "Look how unstable you are. Look how aggressive you are. Look how sensitive you are." The trap is not the lie they told. The trap is the response they are waiting for you to give. This is the foundational law of power dynamics that Machiavelli understood instinctively. He observed that those who rely on deception always need their target to engage emotionally. A manipulator without an emotional reaction from their target is a magician without an audience. The trick has no effect. The performance has no power. And here is where your intelligence has been working against you, because you are aware, because you can see the manipulation, because you have a strong sense of justice. Your instinct is to confront, to clarify, to defend, to expose. You believe that if you can just articulate the truth clearly enough, the manipulator will be forced to admit it. This is the resistance trap. And every time you resist, every time you push back, every time you try to set the record straight, you prove to them that the leash is still attached. You prove that they can still move you. You prove that they own real estate inside your mind. Think about the last confrontation. Really think about it. Who walked away calmer? Who walked away looking composed to the outside observer? Who left the room with more power? You went in to prove a point, and you came out drained, second-guessing yourself, wondering if maybe you were the problem. That is not an accident. That is the exact outcome the manipulator engineered. Your defensiveness was not a flaw in their plan. It was the plan. Strategic thinking begins the moment you understand this. The manipulator is not fighting you. They are conducting you. And as long as you keep playing the notes they hand you, the symphony belongs to them. So what does dark psychology, properly understood, teach you to do? It teaches you to recognize the bait without taking it. It teaches you that every provocation is a question and every response is an answer they are cataloging. It teaches you that the most powerful word in your arsenal is not a clever comeback. It is silence. Calculated, deliberate, surgical silence. Because silence is the one response they cannot weaponize. Silence is the void where their performance dies. But silence alone is not enough. Silence is only the first principle. Because if you go silent without understanding the deeper framework, the manipulator will simply escalate until you crack. And that is where most people fail. They try to ignore, they try to be the bigger person, and they collapse 3 days later in a wave of suppressed rage. That is not strategic yielding, that is suppression, and suppression always loses. To master Machiavelli's principle of winning without force, you must first master the concept of the vacuum. Nature, as the saying goes, abhors a vacuum. So does a manipulator. Their entire psychological ecosystem depends on continuous emotional input from their target. Your fear, your guilt, your anger, your desperate need to be understood. These are the nutrients that feed the dynamic. Cut off the nutrients and the organism starves. But here is the part that separates the amateur from the grandmaster. You do not just go silent, you go opaque. There is a profound difference. The amateur ignores. The grandmaster becomes a mirror with nothing behind it. The amateur withholds in anger. The grandmaster withholds with curiosity. The amateur is reacting through avoidance. The grandmaster is observing through detachment. When you implement the vacuum, you are not punishing them. You are not giving them the silent treatment. You are not playing games. You are simply removing yourself as a participant in their theater. You become an audience of one, watching from the back row, taking notes. And this is where emotional intelligence becomes a weapon of self-mastery rather than a vulnerability to be exploited. Because most people use their emotional intelligence to understand the manipulator, hoping that understanding will lead to resolution. The strategist uses emotional intelligence to predict the manipulator, knowing that prediction leads to detachment. When you create the vacuum, watch what happens. They will escalate. They will say something more provocative, more outrageous, more designed to pull you in. This is the moment of truth. This is the moment that will define whether you remain in the trap or step permanently outside it, because every fiber of your conditioning will scream at you to respond, to defend, to clarify, to engage. Do not. Observe instead. Watch them reach for a bigger hook because the smaller hook stopped working. Watch them improvise because their script no longer applies. Watch the panic flicker behind their eyes when they realize they cannot read you anymore. This is the first taste of what Machiavelli called the transfer of power. The leverage is shifting, the momentum is reversing, and they can feel it before they can name it. There is a question burning in you right now. Isn't this just emotional withdrawal? Isn't this just becoming cold? And the answer reveals the depth of the framework. No, coldness is reactive. Coldness is a wall built out of past pain. What you are practicing is something different. You are practicing strategic detachment, which is not the absence of emotion, but the refusal to spend emotion in markets that offer no return. You still feel everything. You simply stop investing those feelings in someone who has demonstrated repeatedly that they will only use them against you. This is not the death of your warmth. This is the protection of it. You are not becoming a colder person. You are becoming a more deliberate one. And the manipulator, who has profited for years on your emotional generosity, is about to encounter the closed market for the first time. But the vacuum alone will not finish them. The vacuum only sets the stage. The next maneuver is what actually flips the entire dynamic on its head, and it is the move almost nobody understands. Carl Jung observed that what we cannot face within ourselves, we project onto others. And the manipulator is fundamentally a person living entirely through projection. They cannot see themselves. They can only see the version of themselves reflected back through your reactions. When you cry, they see themselves as powerful. When you apologize, they see themselves as righteous. When you defend, they see themselves as the wounded party. Your emotional responses are the mirror through which they construct their self-image. Take away the mirror, and they are forced to look at themselves directly. And nothing terrifies a manipulator more than that. The mirror maneuver is the precision instrument of psychological self-defense. It works like this. When they provoke, you do not absorb the provocation, and you do not retaliate. Instead, you reflect their behavior back to them with clinical, almost academic detachment. They make a cutting remark. You pause, look at them with mild curiosity, and say something like, "That's an interesting thing to say. That is it. No defense, no counterattack. Just a calm, observational reflection that puts the spotlight back where it belongs, on the words they just chose to use. They accuse you of something. You do not deny it. Denial is engagement. You simply respond with, "I notice you believe that," and let the silence do the rest. This is Machiavellian counter-strategy in its purest form. You are not lying, you are not manipulating, you are not stooping to their level. You are simply refusing to perform the role they have written for you, and you are gently, surgically, returning their behavior to them for inspection. And here is what they will do, because they cannot help it. They will escalate. They will get louder. They will reach for more dramatic accusations, more outrageous claims. And every escalation makes them look more unstable to anyone watching, while you grow more composed by contrast. This is the moment the manipulator realizes they have lost control. They cannot read you, they cannot predict you, and worst of all, they cannot make you look like the villain, because you have refused to play the role. You will notice something strange begins to happen inside you during this phase. The anxiety begins to lift, the tightness in your chest, the dread of encountering them, it starts to fade. Because for the first time, you are not bracing for impact. You are not anticipating their next move with fear. You are anticipating it with intellectual curiosity. What will they try next? Becomes a fascinating question rather than a terrifying one. This is self-mastery in real time. This is what it feels like when you stop being prey and start being an observer of predators. And the power dynamics shift so subtly that the manipulator often cannot even articulate what has changed. They only know that something is wrong. The game no longer works. The buttons no longer fire. The mirror no longer reflects what they need it to reflect. But there is a deeper layer here, and this is where most strategists stop short of true mastery. Because the mirror maneuver is only sustainable if you have integrated something within yourself first. And that integration is the final hidden key to the entire framework. Jung theorized that within every person lives a part of themselves they have been taught to disown. For the highly aware, the morally conscientious, the deeply empathetic, for you, that disowned part is the tactician, the part of you that can be calculating, the part that can see 5 moves ahead, the part that can be cold, deliberate, and strategic without apology. You were taught, somewhere along the way, that to be good meant to be open, transparent, forgiving, and trusting. And so you exiled the tactician into the basement of your psyche and locked the door. And every manipulator you have ever encountered has detected that locked door from across the room. They know you have disowned your own strategic ruthlessness, and they exploit the fact that you refuse to use it. The integration of the tactician is not about becoming a manipulator yourself. That is the projection your conditioning will try to convince you of. The tactician is not a predator. The tactician is the silent strategist within you who finally understands that not every situation calls for warmth, not every person deserves transparency, and not every battle is worth fighting head-on. The tactician is the part of you that can sit in a room with a manipulator, smile politely, and play 3 moves ahead while remaining completely undetectable. The tactician does not raise their voice. The tactician does not announce their strategy. The tactician simply observes, calculates, and acts with surgical economy. When you integrate this shadow, the entire dynamic with the manipulator inverts permanently. You stop seeing them as a threat and start seeing them as a study. You stop fearing their next move and start anticipating it like a chess player anticipates a predictable opponent. The fear evaporates because fear requires uncertainty, and you are no longer uncertain about who they are or what they will do. Strategic thinking replaces emotional reactivity. Inner sovereignty replaces the anxious eggshell walking that defined your existence. You become, in essence, what Machiavelli described as the prince who governs not through force, but through understanding the nature of those around him. And here is the paradox that will rewire your entire worldview. The more you integrate the tactician, the more genuinely kind you can afford to be in the rest of your life, because your kindness is no longer indiscriminate. It is no longer a vulnerability that anyone can exploit. It is now a deliberate gift, given by choice, withheld by judgment. You become warm with those who have earned warmth, and opaque with those who have demonstrated they cannot be trusted with it. This is not cynicism. This is wisdom. This is the discrimination of energy that every grandmaster, every general, every truly powerful figure throughout history has practiced. You are not becoming worse, you are becoming whole. There comes a point when you execute this framework consistently, when the manipulator simply collapses. It rarely happens in the way you imagine. They do not usually have a dramatic breakdown. They do not usually confess. What happens is quieter and more profound. They begin to avoid you. They begin to seek easier targets. They begin to lose interest in the dynamic because the dynamic no longer feeds them. You have starved the parasite, and the parasite must move on to find new sustenance. And as they retreat, you will feel something unexpected, not triumph, not satisfaction, something stranger, a kind of cold, clean amusement, a quiet recognition that the person who terrified you for so long was, in fact, entirely dependent on your participation. The whole apparatus of their power was built on your willingness to play. This is the moment of checkmate, and it is silent. There is no announcement. There is no victory speech. The manipulator does not even know they have been defeated, because to acknowledge defeat would require a level of self-awareness they do not possess. They simply find themselves with less and less access to you, less and less ability to provoke a reaction, less and less ground to stand on. And you find yourself walking through your own life with a stillness you have not known in years. The dread is gone. The rehearsing of sentences is gone. The audit of your own tone is gone, because there is no longer anyone in your environment with the power to weaponize your words against you. You have removed that power not by force, but by withdrawing the consent that gave it life. And now you understand what Machiavelli meant when he said that what cannot be won by force can be won by strategy. Force is loud. Force is exhausting. Force leaves you battered even when you win. Strategy is silent. Strategy is economical. Strategy lets the opponent defeat themselves while you remain untouched. You have moved from anxious victim to detached grandmaster. You have transformed from the one who walks on eggshells to the one who watches with cold amusement as the manipulator stumbles through a performance with no audience. You did not become cruel. You did not become like them. You simply stopped funding their power with your own emotional reserves and integrated the part of yourself that always knew how to play the longer game. Take a breath. Notice how your body feels right now. Notice the quiet authority that has settled into your chest. This is what self-mastery feels like. This is what inner sovereignty feels like. This is the version of you that the manipulators in your life have been hoping you would never discover. And now that you have, the dynamic can never return to what it was. You have crossed a threshold, and there is no going back to eggshells. There is only forward into a life governed by your own deliberate choices, your own strategic discernment, and your own integrated power. Carry one final thought with you. The deepest revenge is not destruction. The deepest revenge is becoming someone they can no longer reach. Not by leaving them necessarily, but by becoming so internally fortified, so strategically composed, so quietly sovereign, that their words pass through you like wind through an open window. They are still talking. You are simply no longer there to receive it. That is the checkmate. That is the art of winning without ever raising your voice. That is the Machiavellian mastery of human dynamics that you now possess. If you felt something shift inside you watching this, drop the word checkmate in the comments below. Let it be your declaration. Let it be the marker of the day you stopped playing their game and started writing your own. And if you are ready to stop being managed, manipulated, and quietly drained by the people who profit from your kindness, subscribe. This is the only place where dark psychology, Machiavellian strategy, and the integration of your hidden self are explored not as theory, but as the practical architecture of a sovereign life. We do not coach you to cope. We initiate you into command. And whatever you do, don't stop now. The on-screen video matters more than you think. The next layer of this framework is waiting, and once you cross that threshold, the version of you that walked on eggshells will be a stranger you barely remember. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. I'll see you there. See what others miss. Know what others fear. Become who others can't.